Hi, it's Neil here. Before we start today's show, I wanted to let you know that I've teamed up with my friends at HireEct this month. And HireEct is the first chat-based hiring app for startups. And what I love about HireEct is it takes everyone away from the dreaded email inbox and waiting around for responses. Think of it like WhatsApp for recruiting. And the HireEct app brings together recruiters and job seekers so they can directly connect with each other. And this allows recruiters and job seekers to communicate more and receive quick feedback. And the HireEct app also uses advanced technology to efficiently map job seekers and recruiters, all based on their preferences and behaviour. So you can improve your chances of reaching inbox zero, accelerate your hiring process 10 times faster than those traditional ways, all by chatting and interviewing candidates anytime, anywhere, on any device. So I invite you all to download the HireEct app for free from the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. That's HireEct, spelled H-I-R-E-C-T. Give it a try, let me know what you think. But on with today's show.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as many of you know, MuleSoft is a global integration and API platform. But upon reading their recent IT and business alignment barometer, I invited them on the podcast today to discuss the technological operational changes that organisations are facing right now, especially when they're trying to achieve their new business priorities. So I invited Paul Crerand from MuleSoft onto the podcast, and we're going to discuss today some of the significant hurdles preventing automation, security concerns that slow the pace of innovation, disparate systems and why they still remain a key challenge, and also how we can empower non-technical users to create connected experiences. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where Paul is waiting to share all that, his story, and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, everyone. Hello, Neil. My name is Paul Crerand. I'm based in the UK. I'm the CTO for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for MuleSoft, a Salesforce company. I've been with MuleSoft 7 years now. And as the CTO for EMEA, I also formed and represent what we call the Digital Transformation Office.
It sounds like incredibly busy there. And a question I've got to ask every guest this is, what's your origin story? Can you remember where your passion for technology came from and ultimately what put you on this path you're on today in this career in tech?
Fundamentally an engineer at heart.
Yeah.
I cannot look at anything without asking myself why, how, what. And I started out as a telecommunications studying engineer, 4 years studying electromechanical engineering, analog electronics. And then I realized that computing was the future. Spent another year studying digital electronics and central processor theory, as it was at the time. And started my career in computing and started as a communication engineer. I realized everyone in computing, a different world then, making two computers talk to each other back then was a dark art, magic. So I volunteered for anything to do with communications, and that's how I ended up spending a lifetime in what we today call middleware.
And I think that stuff never leaves you, because I'm an ex-IT guy too. And I think so many people now don't want to take a peek behind the curtain or look under the hood and see how it all works. But I can't even go in an event now, a concert or anything, without looking for the wireless arrays and where that Wi-Fi is coming from, and etc. Does it ever frustrate you that people don't seem to care about that stuff anymore and they just want stuff to work without wanting to know how it works?
I learned many years ago, I'm a bit long in the tooth now, I learned many years to let the frustrations go over me. But yes, I do experience frustrations. I've just learned to handle them over the years. But yes, I do get frustrated.
Well, obviously here in 2021, like you said, you're working with MuleSoft and have been for 7 years. And I invited you on the podcast today to learn more about MuleSoft's IT and business alignment barometer, which highlights the technological and operational challenges organisations are facing, especially when achieving their business priorities, which is a huge, huge topic right now. But can you set the scene and expand on that and what that report is about?
Sure. Took place about April, May this year. It's a survey of 2,400 IT decision makers and business decision makers looking at challenges and trends over the next 12 months. And it highlights, well, a self-evident truth. The pace of digitization has greatly accelerated. And without going into some of the detail, just thinking about this time last year, I was speaking with the CIO of a UK company. She had started just before the pandemic, and she'd created her 3 to 5 year transformation plan. And she was talking about this time last year, what she had planned to do in 3 to 5 years, she now wanted to do in 12 to 18 months. And that's such a common story. And the report basically highlights 4 main things. Everyone's looking for greater operational efficiency, which of course we all know means managing costs, increased productivity. That's about improving your margins, of course. Faster innovation. How do I get something new or improved product, service, or experience to market quicker? And of course, empowering business users. Everyone wants, the IT bottleneck. Everyone wants to empower business users. But of course, there are lots of issues around doing that. Organizations still have organizational silos, data silos, product silos, disconnected channels and experiences, inability to change and adapt fast enough, even though they don't want to accelerate it rapidly at the same time.
And I think so much has changed in the last 2 years. And I would argue that 2 years ago, automation was somewhat of a swear word that made everybody nervous. But of course, all that has changed now. And there seems to be a real thirst and desire for technological change. But what would you say are the significant hurdles preventing automation in many businesses?
And I agree with you about the sentiment. I remember speaking with central IT folks, 2-3 years ago, and very anti-automation. Very anti-automation. Now it's a key business driver, the CIO, C-level business wanting to drive it. There is a disconnect. We do see a disconnect between the central IT view of automation and the business use version of automation. So they're not aligned on it, but it's definitely now one of the top drivers. But at the end of the day, if you want to drive automation, there's something like 22 million developers worldwide, according to McKinsey, and there's something like 1 billion knowledge workers worldwide, according to McKinsey. But if you want to drive automation, you need to be able to provide your capabilities in such a way that they're easily discoverable, they're easily usable, easily consumable, reusable, collaborative. And of course, you can govern and secure and manage them. And most organizations don't have that composability as part of their current infrastructure. We've been talking about it for a long time. Gartner's IT Expo last year the entire week was nothing about except the composable business. But you need to have a composable business, those capabilities, in order to truly gain benefits from automation. So the composable enterprise, we've talked about it for over a quarter century, now has to become a reality with automation.
And I also think that the events over the last 2 years have almost been a catalyst for innovation. And businesses are trying to work out how they can work better, more efficiently, leverage technology, etc. But of course, we're now working from anywhere, any location, any time, on any device. And with that becomes a few security concerns too. So can you tell me a little bit more about how security concerns are actually slowing the pace of innovation right now?
Security's always one of those interesting challenges. But yes, innovation, the pace has greatly accelerated, as a direct consequence of the current pandemic situation. And security, its impact, there's many different ways. If you think about, we've had an explosion of systems and data sources. We talk about hyper-specialization, for example. And if you just think, and why do I say explosion? If you just think of one function, marketing, in 2011, there was something like 150 applications in the marketing domain. Last year, 2020, 8,000 applications in the marketing domain. In 2018, there was 6,000. Massive explosion of applications. Most corporate applications aren't designed for external access. They're not designed for scale and availability and security. They have multiple authentication methods, protocols, multiple tools, different approaches to access control and data classification, and policies that were designed for an on-premise world where we own the systems and the data and the processes and the user access. You mentioned devices. They owned the devices, the desktop, the mobiles, etc. And they're struggling to catch up. And regulatory compliance, data sovereignty. There's been a fallout in data sovereignty the last few years, which is greatly complicated matters, regulatory requirements. And even though regulators want organizations like, say, in financial services to move to the cloud, They're then adding other complexities. So, for example, you can move to the cloud, Mr. Bank, or Mrs. Bank, but you must have a cloud exit plan. So how do you move back from the cloud? So, yeah, it's understandable why security is really impacting the ability to innovate at scale and pace as well.
And before you came on the podcast today, I did skim through the report. And one of the things that really stood out was almost 9 in 10, 87%, reported that IT and business alignment has improved dramatically over the last 12 months. It kind of suggests that there are opportunities to overcome security and governance challenges and enable that faster innovation that every business is chasing right now. But so did that or anything in the report surprise you at all?
Not really. The reason I say not really is actually last year, I mentioned the digital transformation office at MuleSoft, which we formed last year. One of the topics that we talked about is one of the things that we've seen is actually that IT and the business are getting much, much closer to line, and industry should stop talking about the IT business gap that people have. It's starting to upset organizations because we're seeing a broad mass of organizations actually now where they are really starting to line and work together, and they're at different stages of their journey. There are exceptions, of course. There are places where there are still the issues. But by and large, it wasn't a surprise. And organizations, even though they are aligning together, they are doing things in new ways. And a lot of organizations are focusing on doing things faster. But actually, speed itself doesn't equal agility. You can do things faster, but it doesn't mean you're more agile. People shouldn't conflate the two. In order to innovate faster, in order to become more agile, you have to have the ability to have those building blocks and reusable building blocks, those reusable capabilities I mentioned earlier, and your ability to innovate and change faster and adapt faster and scale, that comes from agility. Speed's a part of it, but speed on its own doesn't give you agility. But this alignment wasn't a surprise. It validated our hypothesis that we actually were discussing internally at MuleSoft last year.
And in a former life, I used to work in the event industry, and I know there was a lot of talk at the time about unifying the customer experience, mapping the entire customer journey, providing personalised experiences, all those great things. But all the data was scattered in 1,000,001 different places, and there was no way of actually unifying all that data. So I'm curious, are disparate systems still a key challenge, and how do businesses overcome this challenge? Because it's something that will resonate with everybody listening all over the world, I suspect.
Absolutely. We're on a phone call and I'm smiling as you're asking the question. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say even more so than ever. And if you think of the things we're talking about, increased speed, move to the cloud, data-driven organizations, AI, machine learning, hyper-specialized automation, all of those connected experiences, all of those are driving the ability. But if I just think about, I took some vacation the end of August. So the last 5 weeks, since I've been back, some calls I've just had recently, chatting with a global bank a couple of weeks ago. They've spoken with their CDO, Chief Data Officer, new global initiative. They've identified that they've got 2.8 million integrations across their estate. Almost 3 million. Another global bank, 1,400 applications with over 1.5 million interfaces. A global media brand with over 2,800 applications. Everyone's big. UK company I'm speaking with at the moment, well-known brand. They've got 280 applications for a manufacturer, like over 60 SAP instances. And actually, just speaking with a global pharmaceutical, they've got over 100 data lakes. I mean, in my naivety, I thought you'd have one when data lakes came out, but they've got over 100 data lakes. So actually, the challenge is, the need is greater than ever, and the challenge actually is becoming even greater than ever.
It really is. And if we look beyond that, I think airlines, I know a lot of airlines and airports are still running. They're building more applications on top of technology from the 60s. And it's just insane, isn't it? I would just keep building it on top and on top and on top in some areas.
Yes, I did work on some of those systems from companies that most of the listeners won't even heard of, but those core basic systems, they're still running core reservation systems across most of the global airlines, and they were developed in the 60s. The basis of those systems. Yes, that's interesting. Yes, and still very true.
So how can businesses empower these non-technical users to create connected experiences? There's a big rise of no-code solutions, etc. I know this probably frustrates both you and I, that you don't need to be technical anymore, but it is about empowering everyone to be able to create these connected experiences. So how can businesses get on that journey? Is there anything you can share on that?
I mean, we've talked about composability and reusability and building blocks. So the modern API, the application programming interface, I mean, I say the modern API because APIs have been around even before my time. But the modern API, if you think of the modern RESTful API or even the GraphQL API or the async API, they're well understood, well-formed APIs that allow you to normalize how you access your data in your systems. You know, the days of building canonical data models for years are gone. So you start to normalize at an API level. But you think, actually step back, think about how you address complexity in the enterprise. You leverage interfaces, you define abstractions, and you employ patterns. So at MuleSoft, we have API-led connectivity. If you start defining everything, your assets, your data products, your systems as APIs, and think of system-level APIs, abstracting those back-end sources, and expose them so anyone can discover them, anyone can use them internally and externally. Thinking of business processes, using techniques like domain-driven design, where you think of those objects and those processes in your business and represent them as APIs in those business domains and subdomains that are understandable by the line of business teams, not the central IT teams. And then think about your developer experiences. How you create a payload for a mobile device and format the screens is different for a web browser. It's different for a point-of-sale terminal. It's different for a near-field communication device, etc. So you think about how you layer those APIs and publish them such that anyone can discover them, you can catalog them, you can use them. Once you start to have that capability of those assets, you can then start to compose those assets together. Systems administrators, data and information architects can start to compose them into new processes, new models, and you can decompose and recompose. You can fail fast. And once you have everything described in a normalized manner through APIs, you can apply policies. You can apply multiple layers of security and access control and governance, data governance, PII, data governance, data sovereignty. And so that single business platform, that management plane, that window, that view into discovering and cataloging your assets, making them available to anyone, internally and externally, and then the ability to collaborate, having the tools around that, and then the ability to apply management and governance across those tools. And APIs are front and center, the component that allows you to expose all your capabilities in a normalized manner.
And we are approaching that time of the year where everyone's going to be writing lists about tech trends and what to expect in 2022, etc. So what excites you about the road ahead? Is there anything that makes you hopeful about how the world is opening back up and your big focus for the next 12 months?
I'm always excited about, technology. I am a technologist and engineer at a geek. And if I look at the things at the moment, what's coming with AI and machine learning is going to be incredible. And I worked on neural networks in the 80s, and I just think of the advances since then. There's just amazing stuff. The human interface. I say human interface. Taking the C out of HCI, human computer. Thinking about how we interact with computers naturally and instinctively through voice, motion, and gesture is going to totally change that whole entire experience. User-centered innovation. Think of all the innovations now, user-centered, that user experience, and a connected world, connected everything, whether that's vehicles or people. And that also creates global equity. If you look at the innovation in Africa, South America, large swathes of Eastern Europe, of the Far East, etc. Creates global equity. And automation. I mentioned already. We think 22 million developers is a lot of people. Think of 7 billion people on the planet. It's actually not very many. If you can automate and allow 1 billion knowledge workers, the innovation and the change will totally transform business, IT, the world, human experiences over the coming years. So technology trends, I just think, are fascinating and amazing. And starting out now would be an incredible time. In life, in the world. Absolutely.
Well, I've loved chatting with you today and going through the report and some of the trends and insights that you've got from that. But a question I always like to ask my guests is, we come full circle. We began talking about what put you on this path and your career in technology. But now I'm going to have a little bit of fun with you and ask you, is there a song or piece of music that has helped you in your career, help you get your head in the zone before going on stage, or just a reoccurring tune that keeps appearing throughout your career? Is there a song and a story you can share with us? And we'll add that song to our Spotify playlist.
There is. Yes, it's been with me a long time. It's Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. I could listen every day and never tire of it. Yeah, the summer it came out, it was in the charts the entire summer, pretty much 3 months. Just starting the formative years of my life, looking forward, mid to late 60s. The world was changing, the future was hopeful. It's a very up-tempo beat. My first live concert was the Rolling Stones. Symbolizes that late 60s, early 70s. And every time I hear it, I immediately move forward, step up, step into the fray. So like you said, going before speaking on stage, because I am an introvert by nature, public speaking part of my life. It gets me in that head zone. It puts me in a place where, looking towards the future, upbeat tempo, quicken the pace, step into the fray. So that Paint It Black, the Rolling Stones, is that thing that's literally been with me basically almost my whole life.
What a great song. That will have pride of place on the Spotify playlist. Great choice. And before I let you go, for anyone that wants to find out more information about MuleSoft, maybe check out the report or even contact your team, what's the best starting point for that?
Sure, MuleSoft is not too difficult. It's www.mulesoft.com. Myself, Paul Crerand, LinkedIn. The great thing about my surname is there's very few of us, so it's very easy to find me on LinkedIn. And absolutely ping me on LinkedIn, anyone who wants to.
Excellent. Love that. And having looked through the report, it feels now that every department is now a tech department, not just IT. And I've got many different stories on that. I mean, even a chef now needs to know their way around complex stock-taking software. And anyone that's seen that software, it is awful for the most part and very clunky. But I think it's now about empowering non-technical users. That's key to creating these connected experiences that we all want now. And looking through the report, the vast majority of 86% of organisations agree business outcomes would improve if business users were able to use low-code or no-code to securely connected apps and their data and their own to create connected experience. But I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing that, but also your very personal story. It brought everything to life and a great tune too. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Absolute pleasure.
So I cannot thank Paul enough for coming on today and discussing the findings of that MuleSoft IT and Business Alignment Barometer report there, which highlights the technological and operational challenges that organisations are facing right now when they're all trying to achieve new business priorities. But as I always say on this podcast, and I genuinely mean it, more than anything, Paul coming on here, sharing his story, how he got involved in tech, the problems he's solving now, and then leaving us with a great tune. It doesn't get much better than that. So, Paul, if you are listening back, a big thank you for taking the time to share that with me today. And now I'm going to turn the microphone over to everyone listening. We've got you all out there in 165 countries. This is where I ask you to share your stories, journey in tech, the problems that you're solving with technology, or even a great tune, whatever it may be. Even if it's a question or just pitch to come on the show, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter @Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So that's it for today's episode. I will be speaking directly into your earballs bright and early tomorrow, so meet me here, same time, same place, and we'll do it all again. But thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.